Hey Fountain Springs, my name is Pastor Joe, and I am over the Shift Garage car ministry here at the church. I've been lucky enough to be the full-time director of that ministry for the last 2 or 3 years, and really enjoy what I do, what I've gotten to accomplish here. As always, anytime I'm on stage, I'm going to thank you guys for your part in that. Whether you give on the weekends or you pray for the ministry, or if you've actually been to the garage to help and work on cars with your hands, I don't forget about that. I take that very seriously, and I really appreciate what you guys do. I can't do what I do without your support, and so I'm always aware of that, always on top of that, and so thank you very much for what you guys do. Today I want to talk to you about rest. We're going to talk about rest. So before we even get into anything, I want you to find a comfortable position in your seat. Kind of squirm around, get a good spot in your seat, make sure your legs can stretch out, and if you've got a coffee, take a sip of that coffee, really savor the flavor of that. And then let's all together take a deep breath in through our nose and out through our mouth. Just, okay, doesn't that feel good? I feel like you're ready to hear a sermon about rest now, because there's some things, some little things, that just make us feel a lot better when we do them. One thing that I know, now I've talked to a lot of people and they did not know that this was a thing, and now they're believers. So in case you didn't realize, every time you pull up your socks, it feels amazing. So some of you are imagining the last time that you pulled up your socks and you're going, you know what, he's right, that does feel good. Some of you are not on board yet, so I want you to try it. If you've got room, just reach down and pull up your socks. It feels so good. I don't know why that is, but it is the case. It makes you feel great, and it works every time. Okay, so I've got you in a comfortable position in your seat. You're enjoying your coffee, your breathing is correct, and your socks are pulled up. So I now know that you have a 67% chance of falling asleep during this sermon. And technically, you would be applying it because it's on rest. But I really hope that you will stay awake if you can, because this is kind of a give a man a fish versus teaching him how to fish situation, where you could get a little bit of rest this morning. I really think that I've assembled some tools and methods and reasons behind true rest that can serve you a lot better for the rest of your life, to become a bigger and more meaningful part of what you do. I wonder, we're going to start off a little bit heavy. I'm wondering if this scripture describes your life. It's Job 20, verse 18, and it says, "They are unable to relax and enjoy anything they've worked for." So on the face of it, that sounds ridiculous, right? They're working so hard to get things that they don't get to enjoy the things. But is that really that different from what we do? We work for security, we work for stuff, we work for our kids, we work for all these things. I mean, we work for money that converts into those things in our mind. Are we working so hard that we don't ever even get to enjoy those things that we've worked for? Exhaustion is not a status symbol. That's what we need to realize. By exhausting yourself, you will impress very few people. You will impress them for the wrong reasons. You will get burnt out, and you will accomplish less. I had an assistant pastor one time. I pastored a small church in Montana before I came here, and I had an assistant pastor. We were two different people. I am a very type B person, kind of laid back, relaxed about most situations. It takes a lot to get me kind of excitable and nervous, any of those things, and he was a very type A kind of individual. He was very driven and get to the next thing, and what are we doing next, and let's attack it, just nothing happened real calmly. And so once he became my assistant pastor, we started meeting weekly. And we would have conversations about the direction the church should go, and kind of accountability situation for both of us as far as where our lives should go. And in these conversations, I would often bring up, you cannot keep up this pace that you're moving at. It's just too crazy. You're doing too much all at once, and it's going to catch up with you. Well, I came here to Fountain Springs, and then he got an opportunity to take over the church where we were. And so he got to be in charge and try things his way. And if you can imagine, just mentally picture someone trying to pull a stubborn donkey that does not want to be pulled. That's pretty much what the time there looked for them. He just kept going, we got to make this change, this change, this change. And they were a small rural church of ranchers that they take time to make decisions. They got to make sure it's the right decision before they make the decision. And there's nothing wrong with either approach, but they just did not work well. And for all intents and purposes, it looked like this was going to be the way that it was for a long time, that he was just going to be pushing them too hard and they were going to be resisting and eventually just resisting on purpose because of the principle of the thing. But it didn't go on that way forever because he eventually had a massive panic attack and had to spend a lot of time in the hospital over it. He got really sick and had to change the way that he does things. I don't tell you that story as an I told you so because I saw that coming. I tell you that story rather because a lot of you think that since you're maintaining that pace and that speed currently, that you can continue to do that indefinitely. And I'm just telling you, it doesn't work that way. It will eventually catch up with you. It's going to hurt areas of your life. There was a lady one time that ran into her pastor and said, "Pastor, I tried to call you several times on Monday and I could not get a hold of you." And the pastor said, "Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Monday is my day off, and so I'm not available on that day." And she kind of scrunched her face and looked at him and said, "But you're a pastor. How can you have a day off? Because Satan doesn't have a day off." And the pastor said, "You're right. Satan doesn't take a day off. And if I didn't take a day off, I would be just like he is." I think that kind of illustrates the point. It takes some rest to be at our best, at our peak, doing what we should be doing. So, again, I am not a person that's known for being a workaholic because I'm not a workaholic. I think I actually do well in this area where I work when I'm at work, and then I'm present when I'm at home, and I don't take work home with me, and I try not to take home to work with me. So I'm pretty good at that, I think. But I have just come through a time of being real worried in my mind about the future. I got really focused on generating wealth and getting prepared for the future and making sure that we were ready. And I think at my age, that's called a midlife crisis or something. People keep telling me that that's a thing. I don't know. I'll deal with that later, I guess. But I became too focused on that, and I wasn't spending enough time on the present, especially my spiritual well-being. Somehow, in our effort to compete with our friends and neighbors, to keep up with the Joneses, we've twisted rest to be synonymous with laziness. We think people that rest are lazy, and that's just not correct. Genesis 2:2 tells us that God rested on the seventh day after creating earth. On the seventh day, God had finished his work of creation, so he rested from all of his work. Now, if you believe that God was lazy, then that's a different conversation I guess we can have. I will just point out that he created from scratch everything that has ever existed or will ever exist in the previous 6 days. So unless you have done that also, you might not have a leg to stand on in that argument. But we can talk about that later if you want. What you are saying when you don't take time to rest is that you're busier than God. Whether you think about it that way or not, that's what you're saying. That's what you're communicating. And that can become a pride issue. We'll touch on that later, but keep that in mind. That can really become a pride issue. Also, rest is one of the 10 commandments we're always hearing about. Exodus 20, verses 8 through 11 says, "Remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. But on the seventh day he rested. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy." In case you're not using the term Sabbath in your everyday conversation, if you haven't heard that around the family dinner table for a while, let's define that quick. Essentially, it means a rest day. The definition is a day of rest, but more specifically, it's a day of rest for your soul and your spirit. But we'll get to that later. I want to tell you a story about me when I was a kid. My dad was a pastor since before I was born, so grew up in a pastor's household, and I knew the Bible pretty well, and my dad was pastoring this fairly large church at the time, and He and Mom had a habit of having people over for lunch after church on Sunday. And inevitably, if you've ever done this before, there's chores and work that come with that. There's things that have to be done. Mine was generally cleaning a bathroom and sweeping off the sidewalk. We had this long, winding sidewalk, and there was pretty landscaping on either side with mulch, and the mulch would get on the concrete, and they wanted it to look better than that, so I had to go sweep off the sidewalk. But I was a pastor's kid, right? And I was a smart aleck, and I would always say to my dad, Dad, I can't do that work today because it's the Sabbath day, and the Bible says not to work on the Sabbath day. But my dad, being older and wiser and having studied the Bible more than I did, knew about Luke 14:5, which I did not know about. Luke 14:5 says, "And he answered them, saying, Which of you shall have a donkey or an ox fallen into a pit, and will not straightway pull him out on the Sabbath day?" Now, you wouldn't think that those are related, are you? You don't see how these correlate to my story, but my dad is really tricky. What the scripture is saying is, yeah, don't go to work on Sunday, right? But if you're going to church or you're going to the park to go relax and your car breaks down, you have a flat tire, you should fix that flat tire and get to where you're going. Don't just stand by your car till Monday. That's ridiculous. So I would say, Dad, I can't sweep the sidewalk and clean the bathroom. It's a Sabbath day. And my dad would just look at me and go, your ox is in the ditch, meaning you're going to do this thing right now. You have a problem that needs to be fixed on the Sabbath day. So I guess the moral of that story is don't get in a spiritual discussion with somebody that's more advanced than you if you plan on winning. I don't know if you can incorporate that on your own life, but your ox is in a ditch became a saying in my father's household and now my household because I just think it's fun and we keep it going. So let's discuss some practical benefits of rest that you may not have known about. It improves your memory. This is talking about sleeping specifically. You'll live longer. It spurs creativity. You can win athletic events. There was a Stanford University study that said college football players that tried to sleep 10 hours a night after 7 or 8 weeks improved their sprint time and had less fatigue and more stamina. I would have expected the less fatigue and more stamina, but not actually improving the sprint time. You'll reduce stress. You probably knew about that one. It'll help you get to or maintain a healthy weight. That's what we're all hoping for, sleep the calories away. It'll even help you avoid car accidents. In 2009, the studies show that single car accidents, there were more of them that were caused by sleep than alcohol. Being tired at the wheel caused more accidents than drinking and driving. So I hope that was dramatic enough and that I have your attention now. So that is an unconscious form of rest, just sleeping. But if true rest were as simple as just sleeping, it would be really easy. I mean, we wouldn't do it because we don't sleep enough now, but it would be really easy. But it is, in fact, more than just sleeping. It's about taking time to focus on more than just work and sleep. So I'm going to use the example of Chick-fil-A here, both because it's a great example of what I'm talking about, and because it gets me bonus points with David, just mentioning Chick-fil-A. And I think he would want me to mention, if you're in a position to start a Chick-fil-A franchise here, he would love to talk to you, and we need to get that started. That's kind of a different thing. Anyway, ever since the first location opened in 1967, Chick-fil-A has been closed on Sunday. You know they are now, but did you know they always have been? Every location, every Sunday, closed. So in the business world, we could do some simple math and assume that they're losing 1/7 of their income every week, which translates to every year. And given the number of locations they have and how much their annual income is, that 1/7 of their income translates to just a hair over $1 billion per year. So why would Chick-fil-A, as a business, lose $1 billion per year? Well, they don't. In fact, while they're the 8th largest fast food chain, per store, they make more money than anybody. Their direct competition is KFC. So a KFC store brings in $960,000 per year on average, but a Chick-fil-A store brings in over $3.1 million a year. See, they did it as a religious thing. They did it because the Bible says to do it. to give their employees a Sabbath day of rest. But it makes everyone happier and even makes the company more profitable. So it's more than just sleep. And for the conscious side of rest, I want to look at our Bible story for today. The story is about two women, Mary and Martha. Now, Jesus is coming to their house for lunch. So, oh boy, if I told you Jesus was coming to your house for lunch, how would you deal with that situation? What would you do? Because that's pretty important. I think I might have been certainly the last generation, maybe the last year of people. I don't know if you can relate to this, where we had this stuff in our house. We had special dishes, special silverware, special napkins, all that stuff, just in case the president ever stopped by to have lunch at our house. Did anybody else grow up like this? Like you had all this stuff. Maybe, parents differed. Maybe you'd see it on Thanksgiving and Christmas. Maybe not even then, but it was there in case the president stopped by. The president never came to my house. I don't want you to get the wrong idea. We just had the stuff in case that happened. But I think no matter what our political stance is, we can agree that Jesus slightly outranks Trump. And you're welcome for not saying that he trumps Trump, because I considered it, but I didn't. Jesus is coming to your house. How are you going to handle this situation? Well, these two sisters, Mary and Martha, handled it in different ways. And as you might expect, this led to a problem. So one of them is busy preparing a great big meal for Jesus and his guests. Jesus was fairly popular, did not travel alone. He had his disciples, yes, but generally there was a crowd of people following Jesus also. So number one, you have to make a big meal. Number two, it's for the most important person that will ever be on the planet. So if you are a person that's gifted at hospitality, this is officially the time to freak out, right? So she's making the whole Thanksgiving spread. She's got the meat, she's got the stuffing, the cranberries, the mashed potatoes, the green bean casserole. She's doing all of the things, right? And her sister is just sitting at his feet listening to him. Now, I don't know why I think about this. I'm thinking getting ready for Jesus coming to your house. I'm thinking of, you're like, oh my word, Jesus is coming. You throw everything in the closet to get it off the floor, right, so nobody can see it. I know none of you have ever done that, and I'm not allowed to do it now because I'm married, but you throw everything in the closet to get rid of it and stuff it in there so the house looks nice, and then later on, Jesus reminds you that he can see everything, so that was totally useless. That's not in the Bible. It's fun to read the Bible that way, so you got to read the Bible with me sometime. It's a great time. But let me get to the story. It's found in Luke 10, 38 through 42. It says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said, but Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. If you see in there, he says, you are worried and upset about many things, but a few things are needed, or indeed only one. He's actually talking back about the food. He's saying, we don't need all of these things. I'm here giving the best lesson that your spirit and soul will ever receive in your lifetime. This is not the time to focus on your belly. This is the time to listen to this teaching. So go throw something in the Instapot, just one thing, something simple, and then come back here and focus on this. Mary, she's very upset. She uses an exclamation point with Jesus. You have to be fairly convinced about what you're doing before you start yelling things at Jesus. She's upset about it. And Jesus calms her and says, you gotta reset here. Focus on what's important and go for that. And I wonder if, like Martha, we're focusing on the wrong things. We're doing too many things that in the end are not important. At the time, it looks super intense, and this is the thing we got to do. And then you look back on it and go, yeah, that wasn't the important thing. That wasn't the thing I should have been focusing on. I'm going to ask you to kind of date yourself here, but let's be honest, not that bad. It's not that bad. Who here remembers Y2K? Were you there for Y2K? Do you remember everybody talking about that? My dad at the time, so I was a teenager, my dad at the time listened to a lot of like Rush Limbaugh, those type of guys. And I remember just being fascinated about these stories that I would hear on the radio about, planes are going to fall out of the sky, prison cell doors are going to fling open, your car's not going to work because of the computers in it, everything's going to shut down and just be craziness. People were building these underground bunkers. They were getting like the tank under a gas station or a purpose-built bunker, burying it in the ground and putting like 10 years of food and water in it so that they would be prepared for this apocalyptic event. And everybody was just freaking out. Now, the younger people in the room might not have heard a lot about Y2K. The reason is nothing happened, and we're embarrassed about it, and we don't want to talk about it. I actually ended up filming it in my town. I was walking around with the video camera, and I mean like this video camera. It had a VHS tape in it. If you don't know what, it's like this big. Today it would look like I was like a professional newscaster with this camera, but that's just what we had back then. It was actually terrible. But I was walking around with that to see, as the clock struck midnight, what would happen. Our planes to their friends, well, now I got this handy-dandy bunker in case something else happens, or what if I'm around for Y3K and that's the big one, No, it's completely worthless. They spent all this money, they freaked out, and nothing happened. So instead of being a Martha and doing that, how can we be more like Mary? How can we focus, reset on the things that matter? Well, the first thing is that Mary understood the concept of the Sabbath. Again, it's not just a day of rest, it's not just sleeping, it's a day of rest specifically for your soul and your spirit. So, real quickly, let's discuss what our soul is, just so we're all on the same page. You're made up of a few parts. You just sitting there, there's a few layers to what you are. The first are your body and mind. And that's what we talk about almost all of the time. That's what we generally refer to as you, is your body and your mind. That's pretty easy. Your body and your mind are what woke up this morning, what you got ready, put in your car, brought here, and set in the seat. That's your body and your mind. It's a part of who you are. But the other part is your soul. Your soul can't be pictured. You can't see it with your eyes. But it's what we often refer to as our spirit, or being spirited, or the spirit of the situation, whatever. It's a part of who you are. Genesis 2:7 gives us a good example of how this came about. It says, "And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground," so that would be forming your mind and your body, "and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." So, you are not just a body and mind. The soul and spirit animate the body and the mind. The reason you're walking around doing things, thinking the thoughts that you're thinking, is because of the spirit. And the Sabbath is a day of rest specifically for that. I don't think we put enough emphasis on that. We treat the soul and the spirit a little too mystical, and it's weird to talk about, and it's really not. We need to fix that. God rests in this way. He tells us in Exodus 31:17, it's a permanent sign of my covenant with the people of Israel. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, but on the seventh day he stopped working and was refreshed. So you have to understand what that word refreshed. God did not rest on the seventh day because he was tired. God doesn't get tired. If you believe that after 6 days of work God is exhausted, then your picture of God is far too small. God rests, rested then and rests now, because of something called soul care. He wants to take care of himself holistically. There's a great story about this that I think will get the point across. There was a rich man that had always wanted to go to Africa. He had his dream trip to Africa figured out, and he had all the places he wanted to visit mapped out. He'd been coming up with this trip his whole life. And again, a very type A guy, very driven, go, do this, do that, move to the next thing kind of guy. So he gets to Africa, he finds a translator, and hires this group of men to drive the jeeps around, to throw his bags where they need to be in the vehicle, at the hotel, whatever, make everything happen. So he's got kind of this entourage of people following him around. So day one happens, and bam, here we go. We got to get to this spot, drive to this spot. It's really far to that one, get to that one, visit all this stuff, go to bed. Day two, get up, hitting it again. We got to get here, get there. Oh, this didn't go the right way. We got to fix that, get to this next thing. Day three, same thing, running everywhere. So he wakes up day four, totally ready to go again, and he finds this group of men that he hired are sitting under a shade tree just doing nothing. See, we've been getting ready early in the morning. We're going right away. And these guys are just sitting there. And he goes, well, I don't know. Let's deal with it for a little bit. And a little bit goes by, and then a little more goes by, and now it's been a long time, and they're still just sitting under that tree. And he's getting more and more impatient. So he finds a translator, and he says, hey, I'm paying these guys. We got these 4 things to do today. We got to get moving here. They're just sitting over there doing nothing. Then the translator said, oh, no, it's not that they're doing nothing. You see, they're sitting still so that their soul can catch up to their body. I hope that gets the point across. I hope that you follow that in a deep and meaningful way. Have you found yourself today in this talk about soul care, realizing that you're moving your body down the road, you're improving your capacity, you're improving your workload, you're getting more done, you're learning how to do more things and do them better, but you've left your soul behind. Your body's doing great. You're killing it, but you haven't let your soul catch up to your body, and you're being crumpled from the inside here, and it's going to hurt down the road if we don't take care of it. Is that you today? What's more important? Spending time with the creator of the universe, reading his word, spending time in prayer, and talking to him like he's standing next to you, or brushing your teeth? Which one of those things is more important, do you think? Okay, but which one did we do today? You can ask your neighbor if you did an effective job of brushing your teeth, but I hope that most of us in the room at least attempted to brush our teeth this morning. But have we taken time to spend with the creator of the universe this morning? Did we take that as seriously as brushing our teeth? You see, it's the most important thing. We can all agree with that. But it's also sometimes the easiest thing to kind of push to the wayside. If you don't brush your teeth for a week, people are going to notice that. You're going to get comments about that. If you don't spend time in devotions talking to the creator of the universe for a week, probably nobody's going to notice. You'll probably get by with it until it becomes a much bigger issue down the road. That's something we have to think about. You have seen people that think they have it all figured out. They're doing great, right? They got a job. They're putting food on the table. They're holding their family together. What do they need God for? They've got it all figured out. They're doing the whole things themselves. And they might even be doing well at it. They might have a lot of money, great friendships. They're doing great in life. But this is what they're missing in their lives. On paper, they're making it. They're providing food and shelter with their physical body. But how is their soul doing? If they don't have a personal relationship with Jesus and they've been neglecting this soul care, then not very well. It's kind of a house of cards that's been built up. So how do we take care of our soul? What do we do? Because I wouldn't tell you all this and not leave you with some tools, something we can do to apply to our lives and make them better. But before I start giving you ideas on how to do this and improving your life in this way, I want to address the tension between hearing something in a sermon and putting it into practice. Because I think what you're going to hear is really important, and I want to make sure that it gets actually applied. Almost every week here at Fountain Springs, we hear something from stage and go, you know what? They're right. If I did that thing, that would improve my life. And then I think a lot of times we don't do it. I am a reverend who went to pastor school, and I sit in the seat you're sitting in at least 2 sermons a week, and I hear David or someone else say something, and I go, oh man, that's a good point. You know what? If I did that, that would fix that thing in my life that I need to get fixed. I should do that. But not this week, because I've got this week planned out, and it would be kind of inconvenient to incorporate it this week, and then by next week it's gone. That's what I don't want to happen. Because I know this formula for applying things to our lives: thoughts plus action equal life. We can think the thing we heard on stage, but when we put it into action, that actually affects our reality. We have to think it and do it, and then it is who we are. You've heard it takes 30 days to build a habit and all of this stuff, whatever. The simple formula is thought plus actions equals life or reality or whatever you want to say. We have got to put it into practice. And I know that if you want something badly enough, you'll make time for it. I know that a lot of you have young kids in sports, and you travel hundreds of miles so that your kid can play a game. I've got a son in soccer, and this was my first experience with kids' team sports, having a son in soccer. And I remember the first time that they told us that they were going to play a game in Sioux Falls or Denver or something, and I thought, this kid is 8. Is he like pulling a scholarship for this, or does he have a chance at the Olympic team, or what in the world? You're talking hotels and all this travel, and that's crazy to me. But we do that for our kids because we want it bad enough. So I know that if you want this bad enough, you will do it. I don't want this to be something you let go by the wayside, because hear me out on this. This will improve every area of your life. I want you to hear that, what I just said. If you take time to do soul care properly, it will improve every single area of your life. And there are not many things that can make that claim. So how do you do it? Have you ever tried to sit down and relax and think about nothing? Maybe you called it meditation, maybe you didn't, but you just sat still and tried to clear your mind. You sat there and went, all right, Pastor says I need to relax. I'm going to sit here and relax. I'm going to think about nothing. I'm just going to sit here. It's beautiful out here. The birds are singing. I can hear birds singing. That's awesome. I wonder what kind of bird that is. I like to say whippoorwill. That's a fun word to say, whippoorwill. Oh, the bird feeder in the backyard's empty. I got to go fill that. And you just get super distracted. I am not good at that. I can't take time and just try to clear all the thoughts out of my mind. There's too much going on in there. And some of you are terrified to even try it. Some of you are never in silence. You have the radio going, or you're around people, or whatever you got to do. You're terrified to be alone with your thoughts because there's thoughts there waiting for you. There's thoughts of guilt and shame that might creep up if you actually do that. So even if you've attempted it, you actually didn't want it to work out. This is why you constantly listen to music, do something, watch TV, so that you won't have to deal with that. Now, I don't want to disregard meditation. I actually think meditation can be one of the most effective forms of rest if you can do it. I have no problem with meditation if you can do it. However, the problem I have is I think we've been taught if you can't successfully do meditation, that you're out of luck. That's the only thing you can do for rest. And I don't think that's true. Doing nothing is not soul care. Have you ever, oh man, your dream situation, you got some weird holiday thing or something, you got 2 extra days off at work, you're not even sure how it happened, some holiday no one's ever heard of, and you got 2 extra days off of work, and you sit on the couch and you watch Netflix. Whatever season's episode, the show you're watching, you watch the whole thing for 2 days. Now, that should be super relaxing, right? But it's not. After 2 days of doing that, you get up and you're just as tired as when you sat down. It didn't do anything for you. It certainly wasn't soul care, because doing nothing is not soul care. But it's actually super simple. I'm going to give it to you now. It's going to come and go quickly, so I need you to pay attention. I know I told you to get wriggle down into a comfortable spot in your seat, but I need you to sit up for just a little bit, because these are going to come fast and quick. This is your 2-step life hack for the week. Step 1 is to figure out what fills you up, what feeds your soul. What's the thing that when you do it, you just feel super rejuvenated and ready and more at peace? I want you to do more of that thing. I went to school for this, and I took time to prepare this. This is the step that I came up with, so take it seriously. Step 2, figure out what drains your soul and do less of that thing. Figure out what it is that when you get it done, you're like, oh man, that was exhausting. I don't want to do that again for a long time. See if there's a way that you can do less of that thing and improve your life in that way. So I have some homework for you. I know that when I say homework, we're all thinking the same thing. I hate it. I was a terrible student. I hated homework. But this is going to be fun, and it's going to improve your life. I want you to come up with some things that fill you up spiritually, that fill up your soul. I want you to come up with 4 of them. One of these things you're going to do daily. One of these things you're going to do weekly. One of these things you're going to do monthly. And one of them you're going to do annually. Very good. You guys are paying attention. I appreciate that. Something you can do daily should be very simple to pull off, probably free or super cheap because we're going to be doing it daily, whereas your annual thing can be a bit more extravagant and harder to pull off. This year, I did a bunch of research. I read several books about this, and I discovered that you can actually choose to be happy, at least a lot happier than you were. I really believe that. It has always confused me that there are people in much crummier situations than I'm in that are so happy. They're happy all the time. They're so happy when they walk into the room, they make everyone else happy. And then there are people from all standpoints on paper in a much better situation than me. A lot more money, big house, fancy cars. They've got a bunch of friendships. I mean, important, powerful people that are just grumpy and upset all the time. Now, neither of these are true all the time. In fact, most of the time they're not. Generally, they're not. But you have seen both of these situations, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. But I have discovered that you can improve this by simply focusing on the positive. Now, you don't have to become delusional. You don't have to think everything is great. Everything in your life was the way it was supposed to be and you're happy about it. But when possible, choose to focus on the positive in that situation. And when you surround yourself with those thoughts and you surround yourself with positive people, you become happier. It's that simple. You can do that. The number one tool I have found for doing this in my own life is my daily soul care. I take 15 minutes a day now, and I do something restful. My go-to right now is to sit on the front deck at our house. There's a small deck. It holds 2 reasonably comfortable chairs, and I'll get a drink or something and go sit out on that deck in the evening. It's summertime, right? It's beautiful. Most of the time in the evening, see the sun's on the backside, I'm in the shade. It's a nice temperature, and I can just sit there and rest and relax. Generally, somebody is mowing their lawn, and I can watch them. I can hear the mower going up and down and sometimes smell fresh cut grass. Maybe I'll watch a robin trying to catch worms out of the ground because I've got a sprinkler going in the front there, and it's just extremely relaxing. See, one of the things I learned in the book, The Power of Positive Thinking, it's actually a very religious book, and they talked about getting in the rhythm of nature. See, we live in the rhythm of mankind. We live in man's rhythm. I get off work at 5. I got to be at that place by 8. The store closes at 9. I get hungry at noon. All these things are by the watch, by man's rhythm. But getting in the rhythm of nature, listening to the wind go through the trees and watching a robin work in the yard, just existing in the rhythm of nature. There's something so restful and relaxing about that. It actually rejuvenates your soul. Then, about once a week, I make time, I pick an evening, and I go cruising out in the hills in my old truck. I've got a 50-year-old pickup truck. Something about that is just fun to me. A rusty old truck where everything in it is broken. It doesn't have, forget about air conditioning, nothing power in the whole thing. Almost everything, the radio's broken, the shifter's loose, nothing works. But it goes down the road and just twisting through a curvy road, looking at the hills, maybe the sun's setting over them, and just, I've got the windows open and air blowing across me. It's so relaxing to me to be in that environment. Something about going down the road in a crummy old truck, I just love it. And that's my weekly thing. It's actually going to help me with my annual thing this next year. This is going to be a big one for me. It's a bucket list item. I've always wanted to have an old vehicle and travel Route 66 from end to end. And I'm going to do that next year with my son. And that, again, is a bigger, more extravagant thing that is better suited for your annual soul care. But I'm really looking forward to that relaxing trip. And you're noticing that my monthly soul care is missing. I have to drop a bomb on you here. Sometimes when we pastors get up here and give a sermon on a topic, we don't have it 100% figured out. I know you're going to need a minute with that, probably. I don't have a good monthly soul care right now. I'll get there. I'm working on it. And once I get it, it will improve my life and my situation and make me overall happier. But I don't have it yet. I'm still working on it. So I'll be working on it with you because I don't know what it is for you. Some of you are more rejuvenated being around a bunch of people. Some of you are more rejuvenated being kind of isolated. Maybe it's reading a book, doing a hobby, taking a trip. I don't know what it is for you. But I know that if you look deep inside your soul, that you will find out what fills you up and what feeds you and what that soul care will look like. Because again, I don't want us to end up like the people described in Job where he says they are unable to relax and enjoy anything they've worked for. I really think that God has more for your life. He didn't put you here just to work hard for things that you don't get to enjoy. I don't believe he would do that to you. I think he's more loving than that, and I hope that you do too. I hope this has been helpful. I hope that these tools and tips improve your life and your situation. Let's pray.